In this video, I will be explaining exactly what a fictional dream is and how you can incorporate it into your story. The fictional dream is a term coined by the late writer John Gardner, author of several books about the nature of fiction writing. The book I will be referring to today is The Art of Fiction: Notes on Craft for Young Writers. I stumbled upon this book when I was in graduate school, right? My professor gave it to us and I just fell in love with it. It was a craft book unlike anything I have ever experienced before. The usual books are just, they're just normally, step by step, this is what you do and this is why you do it. Very, very, very formal. But this John Gardner book was something else. It was something different totally. I mean, he's very, very specific in how he approaches it. And I think that all writers out there should pick up this book and read it because it's very, very good. It will definitely help them in their writing adventures, no doubt. I'll start off with the fictional dream talk by mentioning that it's kind of like being in the zone, right? So if you're into sports, right, and you watch Michael Jordan or Tom Brady or Kobe Bryant, if you watch them have like a really awesome game, and they're just untouchable, they cannot miss a shot, everything they do is perfect, right? That's being in the zone. And I kind of like relate that to being in the fictional dream. They always bring their best game, and that's what a writer does when they write with the intentions of a fictional dream, is they write so specifically and so detailed with everything they do, from the character down to the setting, down to the choices, that it completely just consumes the reader, and it makes the reader forget that they're even reading a book, that they're sitting there on the couch or wherever they are and they're reading it. They don't think of it like that. They think of themselves as being within the story, within the lines of the story. They are there with the characters. In any piece of fiction, the writer's first job is to convince the reader that the events he recounts really happened, or to persuade the reader that they might have happened. Stephen King is a master at this. I mean, I'm sure most of you out there have read at least one Stephen King novel. I've read a few, and his prose is just fantastic. It's one of the best, no doubt. That's why Stephen King is Stephen King, is because he's able to tell a story where the fictional dream is the whole thing. And that's what you should aim for every single time. Now, it may seem like talent is selective. It really isn't. I think that there are definitely some writers out there that the fictional dream comes more natural to them. But that shouldn't say that it's impossible for any writer, right? Because, you can learn. You can just learn. You just practice and practice and practice, and eventually you will get better at it. The more you study, the more you'll get better at it. That's just a fact with anything. In the fictional dream, characters must be realistic, okay? They must be relatable, okay? They can't be something so otherworldly that you can't relate to it. And by otherworldly, I don't mean alien or anything like that. I mean that they don't act human, right? They don't make human type choices where they have empathy and sympathy for others. If they're just completely like narcissistic, that's totally unrelatable. It's unrealistic to just always be like that. Although narcissistic people absolutely do exist, it's not something that people want to follow and read about for 400 pages. Also, the setting must be able to experience with all 5 senses, right? So the writer must really get down to the nitty-gritty and describe in vivid detail, what the sky looked like, what the apple tasted like, right? What the explosion sounded like. And the choices of the characters must be logical, right? They must make logical sense. You can't have a character who acts one way throughout the entire story, suddenly at the end, when it's crunch time, have them make a decision that is completely just out of their character. That will break the fictional dream. It won't work, and the reader will be out. The reader will not invest probably any more into it at all. They might not even finish their story. So making logical sense, characters making choices that make logical sense is very, very important. If you pick up any craft book, they will tell you that an author needs specific and believable detail to tell the story. Gardner does the same in his book, however, he approaches professing that information from a different angle. The writer, in effect, argues the reader into acceptance. According to Gardner, a good writer must prove to the reader that they are not there on the couch or on the chair, but in the haunted house with the demon, or in the courthouse, watching the lawyer battle for the client's freedom. The goal is to get the reader into the fictional dream by way of superb attention to detail. Vivid detail is the lifeblood of fiction. The reader is regularly presented with proofs in the form of closely observed details that what is said to be happening is really happening. Now this part is a no-brainer, right? Any writer out there should know that observing people is absolutely mandatory if they want to make a good story, right? So they got to study people, right? They have to eavesdrop on conversations, stuff like that. They have to pay attention to body language, how people tell jokes, how they smile, if their nose kind of wrinkles up when a person smiles. They need to know that each and every single time. They need to incorporate that into their story if they're going to make their fictional dream believable. So when you're out there, right, you don't need to take like a notebook or a pen with you or anything like that, but you should just like remind yourself to observe people. Take mental notes that you're out there studying, and then bring those mental notes back with you and say, hey, all right, I'm gonna write this down right now so I can put it in the story later on. So you need to observe people. He must present, moment by moment, concrete images drawn from a careful observation of how people behave. And he must render the connections between moments, the exact gestures, facial expressions, or turns of speech that, within any given scene, move human beings from emotion to emotion, from one instant in time to the next. Before I go any further, I would like to tell you about my novel editing services over at noblecopy.com. If you have a completed manuscript and you want an editor to give it a professional critique before you publish it online or send it out to a literary agent, you can head on over to my website and check out the different plans that I offer. For all inquiries, you can reach me at noblecopytips@gmail.com. Now, when John Gardner talks about symbolism, he doesn't mean like pre-made symbols, right? So like Back to the Future, the clock tower, that's a massive, major, right, in-your-face symbol about time, okay? Or like Pulp Fiction, right? The briefcase that opens up and it glows, you know what I mean? So like those are really heavy-handed, obvious symbols. And I don't think that's what John Gardner was talking about in his craft book. So the symbols that he's talking about arise unconsciously, right? So as you're writing your story and you happen to mention like a mirror or, I don't know, like a bench or a hat or something like that, what he means is that eventually, as the story goes on, you will probably use that hat or that mirror in some sort of certain way in relation to another character that will symbolize something. You will probably do it unconsciously. That's what Gardner means. And that's totally fine. That will work too. It might actually work better because it's not so heavy-handed. There's not such an obvious emphasis on you to take control of that symbol. Good description is symbolic, not because the writer plants symbols in it, but because by working in a proper way, he forces symbols still largely mysterious to him up in his conscious mind where, little by little, as his fiction progresses, he can work with them and finally understand them. Now what he means is the mood, right? So let the mood of the character describe the detail. This is very important for the fictional dream to seem realistic. So what do you think about the fictional dream? Let me know in the comments below. Take care.